right, welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. I am Mind Runner, and I am super excited for my guest at this time. She is the Warrior Poet Laureate of X. She is a good friend of ours, definitely a good friend of mine, fast friend that we've met through many different social circles on X, but definitely from the writer's block. And I'm talking about Elizabeth Barr, aka Texas Elizabeth, and she is our warrior poet here at Mental Health Mondays now, too. I've officially declared it. Elizabeth, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me and inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm real excited because you've shared a lot of your personal journey with us in several of the X spaces. And there's a lot of soul. And for people that don't know, Elizabeth and I primarily met, even though our social circles, our orbits overlap in so many different areas, we met through the writer's block with Stephanie and Heidi, where you were sharing a lot of your poetry, which I felt was very powerful and came from the soul. So wanted to reach out to you and really have a nice chat with you about your life, your experiences, your ups and downs, and how that helps fuel your creativity and your passion for that. So I'm glad you're able to be here. What let's talk a little bit about your poetry. When did you start? Have you always had that poetic soul? Has it always been part of you, or is that something you've only recently been exploring?
I have had that for probably since I was in elementary, junior high. Um, since I did come from a very abusive family,
Mm.
I wrote about it. And that helped me deal with the bullying at home from my mother, my brother, and my sister, helped me deal with the bullying from school. So there was just a lot of that going on in my life completely.
Mm-hmm.
And since I didn't really have anybody to talk to that I felt I could trust, I wrote because no sooner would I tell, let's say, a neighbor, my mother would hear about it.
Mm.
So I went into hiding everything from the world because if she heard something I said that she didn't like, oh, there was all types of issues at home.
Yeah, it would. Would you have to pick your own switch or something, or even worse?
No, she picked up whatever the heck she wanted to. I
Uh,
got beat by belts. I got beat by a steel baton. I mean,
oh,
my brother and sister threw me up against a brick fireplace, and I got in trouble over it. Figure that one out.
uh, that are you? Were you the oldest in the family or the
Yes,
youngest? You're the
I
oldest.
was the oldest, and the only thing I've ever been able to figure out is that since she got pregnant before her and my dad got married, I think she resented me.
Interesting. How did she kind of display that? Like, did she treat the other two differently? I mean,
Oh
obviously,
yes,
the fireplace was an
oh
example.
yes. There was one time I was in the sixth grade, and I was bused to another school because where I went to the school that I was in didn't have had too many sixth graders, so they bused me over to another school. And when they did, I would get out of school earlier to catch the bus to get back before the bell rang for my sister and brother to come out. And I remember one time somebody walked up to the car and asked about Richard, asked about Johnny Sue, my brother and sister, and then asked about me. And she says, "Well, you know how she is."
Oh wow. What do you think they meant by that? You know how she is.
I was the black sheep of the family.
Mm. So you kind of were the scapegoat of anything that went wrong with that, right?
Very much so.
What and but that's interesting though, because you didn't seem like you're in an environment where you really couldn't trust anybody, but you found a way to turn inside to yourself and like, was it journaling? Was it poetry? Was it a bit of both? Or how
A
did
little bit
that,
of everything.
was it, and did it start just like you just someplace to vent? And since you didn't have a person to talk to, it just, the pages helped you?
Yes, but I would have to destroy them rather quickly after I had done them because she felt I had no rights to privacy.
No.
So I would have to write it and then pretty much destroy it because if she'd have ever seen some of the stuff, oh, that would have just been more abuse on me.
What do you think? Like, I know, like generations, like today's generations, a lot of people are arguing that they're a little too soft. But I do feel like the pendulum has swung kind of the other direction. But when I was growing up, there was a lot more. I felt like there was a lot more freedom, but there were some very clear boundaries that if you cross the line, you would get a butt whooping. And then my parents grew up, and my parents' parents, it was like there were always stories of, hey, you're gonna get switched if you mess up. But it in like it sounds like your situation, a lot was your mom kind of taking out a lot of her her own frustrations or self-doubt onto you and projecting them onto you,
Yes.
and using you as kind of a target. Was she unhappy with, how did she and your dad get along?
They well, my dad worked in the oil field, so he was gone a lot when I was growing up. Now when I got into high school he was home more. But I can't prove it. I just go under an assumption is she would not tell my dad the complete truth. I don't think she ever did.
Do you
You
think
know.
she probably was telling him stories and like making you sound like the bad one?
Yes,
I can see
very
that.
much so. Um, I this is a good example. Is on my 13th, the day before my 13th birthday, which was May 2nd. The day before that, I can't remember what I had done in her eyes that was so wrong. I really can't. But all of the kids in the neighborhood, because this was when one of the times she beat me with the steel baton, and they could hear me screaming and begging for my life. I just knew she was going to kill me that time.
Mm.
And the next day, I am covered from the front of my neck all the way down the front of me, the back of my neck, all the way down through my legs and everything in bruises. And Debbie McKay and Shawnee Shelton rode, uh, were classmates of mine. And they went to Mr. Wade, who was the counselor at the junior high where we attended school.
Mm-hmm.
And they told him what they had heard. And they told him what we saw afterwards because she was completely covered up. I mean, May 2nd in Hobbs, New Mexico. Come on, you're wearing summer clothes. I had on a long sleeved turtleneck sweater so nobody could see any bruises
Mm-hmm.
and jeans. But they saw that I was having trouble walking. So I had gone to my first period class, which happened to be my biology. And the next thing I know, he's coming over the loudspeaker asking for me to come to his office. I went down there and he could tell I was in pain.
Yeah.
And he called in the school nurse and he says, I need you to look at how bad the bruises are. And this was a black lady who was rather dark
Mm-hmm.
in her coloring. And we went in the bathroom. She went almost white.
In shock at the bruises. Wow.
Yes. And she walked back into his office with me after I got dressed and said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. He then contacted my second and third period teachers and told them not to count me absent. And back then, since they didn't have social services the way they do nowadays,
Hmm.
um, he took me over to the juvenile probation office, and they brought in a police officer, female police officer, had her look at me, and she was in shock.
Wow.
And came out and she said, "This kid is abused. That's all there is to it."
Yeah.
And the officer said, "Today's your birthday, right?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "How old are you now?" And I says, "I'm 13." And he says, "Well, the only thing that can be done is you have to place charges against your mother." And I looked at him and I says, "Are you out of your ever loving mind? The judge will give me back to her and she will kill me." No.
Wow.
And I just looked at him like, he'd lost his ever loving mind. And so we went back to school, and I found out years later that Mr. Wade had had a meeting with all teachers, seventh, eighth, and ninth graders. So if they got me, there was never a note sent home about me on negative, and they never told her anything about what I was or was not doing right in class. They would talk to me, but they never told her anything.
Wow.
And that note was kept in my file, and it went with me to high school. And it's about the time I graduated that I found out about it.
Wow. That, do you feel like they let you down, or was it a matter of their hands were so tied at the time there wasn't
Their
anything
hands were
legally?
tied.
Yeah.
There
Oh.
was no legal system really to protect kids the way there
You're
is.
you were right, and I hate to say it, but you were probably your instincts were right. If you had pressed charges with your mom, I mean, my faith in the legal system is not very strong. I wish it was stronger, but I mean, the chances of you going back to them giving you back to your mom, what's the next level from a steel baton? I can't even fathom that. But Elizabeth, I'm so blessed that you survived that. Did you how did you get out of that situation, and like were you able to, and did what came after that? You said you got out of high school. What were you a bat out of hell literally after that?
Well, this is the hard part of my story that I don't really like talking about, but maybe it will help somebody.
Okay.
I landed up with a guy, ended up pregnant before graduation.
Hmm.
I went to my grandmother's. My grandmother figured out I was pregnant. I didn't even know I was pregnant. My period at that time was so topsy turvy that I never even thought about being pregnant, but I did.
Hmm.
And when I got back to Hobbs and I told him that I was pregnant, he did what a lot of boys do, ran for the hills.
Oh,
Well, when my mother found out that I was pregnant, I was planning on going to give the baby up for adoption, knowing that I could not take care of it, and also not knowing there were programs out there that would have assisted me in being able to keep the baby and fit go to college. I didn't know about these things. I came from an upper middle class family financially. So anytime they ever discussed food stamps or welfare, there was nothing but negativity came out of my
yeah.
mother and father's mouths.
Yeah.
And one night, her and my dad had gone somewhere. I don't even know where they went. And they came home, and my mother proceeded to beat the holy hell out of me. I'm laying down on a beanbag chair, and I'm about 6 months along. And she begins beating me and kicking me and everything else, and flat out tells me she's taking me to Roswell, New Mexico the next day, and I'm having an abortion.
Roswell. Yeah, I mean, I go ahead. I'm sorry. It just like the thought of giving your baby to aliens at Roswell just popped in my head. But that's I'm sorry. That just popped in my mind. Like she's like, all right, here, take this human child. I'm like, never mind. I apologize. Go. I hate to break the mood, but
You put another perspective on it, that's for sure.
sorry. I'm so sorry, but I
There's
can't believe
nothing to be sorry about.
I can't
Um,
believe that your mom is taking it that way. Please continue.
um, they put me through labor. I had a 10-pound weight connected to a balloon that was inside me, and I'm going through labor. And I can honestly, to this day, still remember the pain of that labor. And that's the reason I am anti abortion,
Mm,
because of this. And that's just one of the reasons. And I know it was a little boy. I know in my heart it was a little boy. And, but I never saw the baby afterwards. I don't know what they did. I don't know where they took him or anything. I just know they then released me. Uh, it was the first football game of the season for Hobbs. My brother and sister played in the band, so after we got back into Hobbs, she has me take her over to the stadium, and then I'm to take the car home. And she will get a ride with my dad, who's there in the pickup. And for days, I cried and talk about hatred towards somebody.
mm,
The first time I really actually hated her. And I suffered many years of guilt of murder, many years, even though I had no say so in it. I didn't
yeah,
know there was anybody that would help me. Nobody had helped me in the past. Why were they going to help me through this?
yeah, yeah.
And so I suffered many years. The men that I married that know about it constantly kept telling me, it's not your fault. You didn't
Yeah.
do that. And that's the reason one of my husbands, Richard, he did not like my mother, and he had no respect for my dad, because my dad was standing there and did nothing as
Mm.
she's beating the holy hell out of me. And I guess it was about 3 or 4 days later, I packed up and left, and she didn't know where I was or anything for about a week, until a couple of people just kept nagging me to call her to let her know I was alive. And from that point on, I did not live in her house.
Amen. I mean, I don't blame you for getting out. Do you I I mean, I don't even know her, but already I'm like, oh, but I always try to even the most evil deeds with that people do. It does, damage people hurt other people or hurt people hurt other people. Was she did you ever learn anything about her past? Was she damaged or was ever abused, or was it just she resented having you?
Well, there was the resentment on having me, but I also found out, her mother died about 8 days after she was born. So
Mm,
there's a whole lot of psychotic people in my family on her side.
mm-hmm.
She was adopted by her dad's sister and her husband, and that's where she grew up. And I can't prove it. I'm going on because of knowing some of these people, even though they're all dead now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Meeting them, getting to somewhat know them, their judgmentalness, their that whole side of the family has a major problem with letting things go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was a lot going on there, a lot more than what my mother would. My mother never told me anything, but
Mm,
I did forgive her because forgiveness is for me, not for her.
yes.
And I have forgiven her for everything she ever did. Um, because it was still a part of me all through all of that. I still loved her. She was my mother.
Hmm.
Abused children still love the person that is abusive.
Yeah.
And I have forgiven my dad for not being more protective of me. My brother hasn't spoken to me in 30 years. He doesn't want to have anything to do with me. Fine. Uh, when my husband was dying from cancer and the doctor had told me we have 14 days, I wanted my mother and dad. I was
Yeah.
scared.
They're still your mom and dad. Yeah.
Right. But when I called them to tell them, they said they wouldn't be there. I said, okay, fine. And because of the frame of mind I was in, I'm dealing with a man's family that don't like me. They thought I was a gold digger, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
And so I did yell at them, why the didn't you abort me like you did your other child, Martha? And I hung up on them. And I didn't speak to them for about 2.5, 3 years.
Wow.
And but I got past that, and I'd call and check on them. But what's funny, and this is what's absolutely always been comical to me, Richard, he didn't like them, but my mother thought he was the greatest thing to walk this earth.
Oh, really? And that's something.
Oh yeah. And one time, out of anger, I said, she was bragging about how he was such a good husband and everything. And I said, yep, but he can't stand you. I mean, I
Boom.
can hit below the belt when I want to.
Yeah, you know what? You had more than enough right to say that. You had to. That was a that she deserved to hear that, I think. Um have you it's interesting you talk about your brother. Do you think it's because he doesn't want to acknowledge the abuse that you suffered?
He doesn't want to acknowledge that. He doesn't want to acknowledge that he did anything wrong
Yeah. Like
throughout our
turning the
growing
other
up years.
yeah, like turning away, like to avoid the guilt of not stepping in when he should have.
Right.
Mhm. What about your sister? Are you
My sister's deceased.
um, before
And I was not ever even notified about her death until I called my parents and I left a message on their answering machine. Well, you ought to be happy my son's dead now. And they, I know they had caller ID. They had to have. But they tried to say that they hired a private investigator to find me. They knew exactly where I was.
Yeah.
Uh, but they just didn't contact me. My sister died when I was living in Oklahoma with my husband Sammy before he was killed in a car wreck,
Mm,
and I had to stay there for a while until I could get myself back to Texas where I'm supposed to be.
mhm.
And I just couldn't believe that they said they didn't know how to reach me. I had called them from Oklahoma several times.
Yeah.
So to say the my mother's side of the family is dysfunctional is an understatement.
Sounds like it. Jeez. Sounds like it. That's but you hit the nail on the head about forgiveness. Like you don't have to forget, but forgiveness is about you, not about them. It's like you don't owe them anything. Forgiveness, if you it I think you were the one that brought up in a space recently about holding on to for not forgiving somebody is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I
I
think
was
you were
one
the
of
one that
them.
said that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I can imagine now. And do you think that maybe your father was treated similar to how you were? Like was she like that with him? A little bit abusive, like, or why he wouldn't
I
step
think
in?
so.
And how has this affected, like, I can't imagine how this would affect you going forward with relationships, not just romantic, but even just friendships. How did that affect your trust in people?
I cannot judge somebody else on what somebody else has done to me.
Wow. I wish a lot of us were like that. There's a lot of us that need to learn that lesson, but that's tremendous. And it sounds like your husbands were different than what you experienced at home. Would you say that, or
One of them was very abusive. He is the as I call him, the sperm bank to my children. Uh, uh, the second, the second one treated me like I was the Queen of England.
oh,
Um, he loved me for me, and I found this out after he died. There was a friend of ours by the name of Dan Connors, and he told Dan Connors, he said, "I do not understand how she turned out, and I'm not trying to brag here, to be such an angel compared to what the people are that raised her."
yeah. It's interesting because you would expect in situations like that to have just really produce really broken people, but do you feel like that made you stronger or maybe more self-reliant?
More self reliant, um, and repeat. Well, I always repeated in my head constantly, God loves me.
Mhm.
And what does God represent? He represents love. So I've always tried to be very strong and giving of love, and knowing sometimes I'm not going to get it back.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do. But I'm the one that has to take responsibility for my actions. I'm
Mhm,
going to be the one that stands before God on Judgment Day.
mhm.
Nobody else is going to be standing there for me but me.
And I imagine that what you went through also instilled a lot of empathy for other people. Would you say, like, for Vic, for people that were the people that are taken advantage of?
Yes,
Would you agree that, like, because I don't want to say other people, like, not the oppressors, but like, do you find yourself rooting for the underdog a lot of times in situations?
I try, if they listen, to give them advice on how to stop being so negative.
Yeah. How do you get people to listen to you though? Sometimes I think people want to wallow, but in negativity. But it's remarkable, and it sounds very divine. And I talk about my faith in Christianity on here, and not everyone is a Christian, but there's a divine magnet, I think, that pulls people into, out of, situations like that and put them in where they need to be. And I think it's a blessing that you came out of this situation and became such a beautiful person that you are now. I think that's, you see it in your poetry.
I try, my heart's in my poetry.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, and I write from the heart. I guess that's the reason I don't think I could ever write out my story, because it's not in my heart,
Mhm.
if that makes any sense.
It
I don't
does.
want I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me. Okay.
Mhm.
Pity does no good for nobody.
Yeah.
And like when I'm talking to somebody that's having issues, I'm honest and I'm blunt. And I've actually said to people, get off the pity party.
lot more people
So,
need to hear that, I think.
so I, self pity does no good. You don't get anywhere with that. You know,
Hmm.
I know there's people that have mental disabilities,
Hmm.
depression and all of this. But if you will stop thinking about you all the time, the depression's not going to hit you as much because there are people out there that's got it worse than you do. There's people out there that's had it worse than I've had it.
Hmm.
You
and
know,
and I and there's a difference too between, there are some people that have a chemical imbalance and there is a depression that needs to be diagnosed and fixed, and sometimes you need pharmaceuticals and sometimes you need other things like that. But the flip side is, I feel like in society there are a lot of people who they almost they wallow a little bit in negativity, and sometimes, and this is something interesting, because I don't know if you've seen Redham's uh his Substack, but he talks a little bit about procrastination, and I think there's something to this whole thing about what you're protecting yourself from when you procrastinate, but also if you wallow in negativity and hopelessness. Sometimes what it's really doing is protecting yourself from something, like what I was talking about, is about with Radham's Substack, that he talked about a lot of times with procrastination. We're protecting us from something, a feeling. I think a lot of times too, where people kind of they wallow a little bit sometimes in negativity, to as an excuse to not grow and progress. Now, that's different than someone like needing to be treated with depression. And what I've found, like kind of like in your case, that there's some of the people who've had truly tragic things happen seem to be some of the strongest people I know. And then some folks that may have had it easier than some seem to be the most, I don't want to say needy, but emotionally needy sometimes. I don't know. Maybe it's just my own personal experience, but do you I think that's an interesting it's an interesting concept, that maybe that some people that like you said, some people just need to get off the pity party train.
yes, and when it comes, I know there are people that need medications. Okay,
Mhm.
I understand this. I'm going to do some walking around. I hope I stay connected.
All right.
I, but you've got to know and be willing to put forth an extra effort to stay on your meds
Mhm.
and do that type of thing. Uh, but you've got to stop thinking that you are the only one.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have a cousin, and it's one that I live with right now, that um, she, when she goes into her depressive states, everything's about her. She thinks that the world should revolve around her.
Mhm.
Okay. And she's done some things she should have never done. And I can't do anything about it. But there have been people that could have held her accountable that don't do it.
Yeah,
Everybody,
they enable her a little bit, huh?
right? Very much so. And nobody's ever enabled me.
Yeah, certainly not in your childhood.
No, even in my
Wow.
adulthood, nobody ever has.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Richard, I went into a very bad depression because he moved me from New Mexico to Dallas, Fort Worth,
Mhm.
which the whole part of Dallas alone is more population than there was in the whole state of New Mexico at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I went into a fear. I was absolutely
Imagine.
terrified. How am I going to learn to get around in this humongous city?
Yeah.
And I went into a depression. It was bad. And I wasn't getting things unpacked and getting the house set up. I wasn't doing anything but hiding in a dark room.
Mm.
And he knew he had two choices. And he took the one that could have been the was the most dangerous one. And it was because we had guns in the house. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in one morning after he'd gotten ready for work, threw the covers off me and said, "Get your ass up and get this house organized. I'm not going to continue living like this."
Oh, wow.
And he knew he was either going to piss me off or he was going to find his wife dead.
Or he was going to find himself dead.
He was staying in touch with somebody that we thought was a friend of mine. She actually wasn't. She was after him.
Ah.
She could, and he didn't even see it.
Hey everyone, I want to pause the multiverse and take a break from diving deep into mental health and human nature to tell you about some friends of mine at King Ari Press. Are you an aspiring author looking for the next step but confused with how to get published? Or maybe you're struggling with a writer's block that you need to overcome? Or maybe you have some questions or concerns about how to get published or how to market your writing out there to get your masterpiece on the shelves. Well, look no further than my friends at King Ari Press. Go to kingaripress.com, and they are an independent publisher with the flexibility to engage in multiple phases of the writing journey. They're here to elevate authors like you and get as many doors open for authors as possible. Instead of the bottleneck of major publishing companies, King Ari Press is looking to get you on the shelves. That's kingaripress.com. One more door open, one more story told. It's time to tell your story. Anyways, let's get back to solving the world's problems one podcast at a time. I'm Mindrunner, and let's get back to the other me and my awesome guest right now.
But anyway, he has said he was staying in touch with her. She was coming down and checking on me at the house.
Probably bad mouthing you.
I was calling him every name in the book but white boy. I was so mad. And that's when I knew I needed some help.
Yeah.
And I went to a clinic and went through some counseling, and I was on antidepressants for about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And when he finally knew the medications were in me, he told me how scared he had been that day. He was absolutely terrified, but he knew he had to do something drastic.
Yeah.
And he said, I was so glad that I was getting cussed out and yelled at and everything else. He says, I could deal with that.
What he couldn't deal with would have been silence.
Right.
Because that's scary. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of a wake up call. I mean, it's brave of him. You know, it's. Do you think it was a matter of he cared about you enough to kind of, in his way,
Cared about me is not the words. He loved me more than anything in the world.
That's he was brave enough to risk death, risk being shot and, murdered. But I mean, yeah.
No, he knew it wasn't going to be him that would end up dead. He knew it would be me.
Oh, I don't know. My money would have been on you on that one, but just the sheer power of adrenaline from what you said. But that's like, again, kind of that divine magnet. Would you feel like that was the kick in the ass that you needed, or was he unfair?
No, it was a kick in the ass that I needed.
And and you said you were only on the antidepressants for a short time. Was that just to get you through? And did you feel like it was just temporary? And tell us about that. How did you go through with the antidepressants, and what epiphanies did you receive after that?
The doctor even told me, said, from where you're coming from, such a little state, living wise, to you have now come to one of the biggest cities, the Metroplex, is scary for you. He says, I'd hate to see what would have happened if he'd have moved you to New York City.
Oh my God. You might as
And
well be on another planet.
yes. And since I didn't know anybody here, and I already knew what his brother and his sister thought about me, I just went into a very bad depression and scared. It was complete fear.
Mm-hmm.
And he did what he did because he knew I'm either going to walk in or hear that my wife is dead, or she's going to get so mad that she does what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, of course, hoping I was going to get mad and get everything done. And I did. I was,
I'm gonna tell you.
yeah, yeah, I
Amazing
went
the
into that.
power.
I'm going to show you, USOB. But,
The power of being pissed off is, so don't underestimate the power of rage.
right. And, because I knew from the moment that he admitted that he loved me, the honeymoon started then and it never ended
That's awesome.
until the day he died.
And was he the one that passed by cancer, or was he the one that?
Yes,
Oh, that's got to be heartbreaking.
it was heartbreaking. It was hard. But I knew when I climbed up on that bed and I told him that it was okay to go, he would have held on. If I
Mm,
hadn't told him it's okay, because most people get sick from cancer and they lose weight. He got sick at 220 pounds. He died weighing 220 pounds. He was fighting, he was eating, because he always told me, because we'd had a conversation about if I went before him or he went before me. And the conversation went, I want you to remarry. I want somebody to love you, take care of you, appreciate you, respect you, admire you. I will never remarry. And I looked at him and I said, why not? He says, because I'm going to have 3 kids to raise, and there will be nobody that will ever be able to take your place in my heart. You are the
oh,
most perfect wife.
that's awesome. Ah,
Because
that's good stuff.
he had a support system. He knew I was there for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's the one that wanted me. We discussed it very seriously. He wanted me to be a stay at home mom. He didn't want me working one job, much less like what I was doing before he and I got together, of working 2, 3 jobs 7 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
which I did. And that's how I kept a roof over my kids' heads, food on the table, and the little bit that I could give them of material things, you know. So I was the one that was blessed when he came into my life.
Wow,
He taught me what unconditional love meant.
that's
And he's the
awesome.
one that taught me that you can buy somebody everything in the world and give it to them. But the one thing that you can give for free is your heart.
That's beautiful. Ah, that's beautiful. Hold on, I got allergies. Hold on. Ah, but like just to share with you, that's I I always say I'm married to a goddess. You know, my wife Deb is the best thing happened to me, and she says that about me. And it's like to be that person for the person, to be that person for them when you see them as this goddess, this wonderful person. That's such a tremendous feeling. You know what I mean? Like you're there for each other. And like you said about riches, you're right. You could buy a yacht, you could spend all this money, but true riches is heart, is love, is like you're saying. And that's wow, that's powerful. I can definitely see where you get your mojo from when you write your poetry. How is your relationship with your kids?
It's rocky because I taught them how to think and not what to think, and they don't always agree with me.
Well, shame on you for not telling them what to think. I mean, isn't that what parents are supposed to do? And
No,
you know, isn't that what our society's supposed to do? Is tell us what to
no.
think and not become critical thinkers, so they can tell us what we're supposed to believe.
My youngest daughter, I'm closest to, but that's because she thinks more like her mom. But her hot temper gets in the way a lot of times. And I understand, and she knows she needs to get some mental help. But in the situation she's in, the money's not there.
Mm,
You know, she's got 3 kids she's raising on her. Well, now it's down to one because 2 of them are basically grown. Uh,
mhm.
one of them is in college and is studying business and finance. The other one is, I'm not sure he knows what he really wants to do yet. And then she's got one that's still in high school.
Mhm,
But they know that I'm there for them and that I'll
mhm,
do what I can financially and everything because I don't have money. Okay.
mhm.
I'm on Social Security. I don't have any money.
Wait, I thought you were a gold digger.
Yeah, right. Okay. Let's move on.
But
But
that go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, that's cool. That's cool though that they can count on you for. I mean, again, going back to the different definition of riches, that you they have that you're part of their support network,
Yes.
and it sounds like she can count on you too, knowing that you're there for. Do you share your wisdom with her, and do you sometimes have to tell any of them the same thing? Yes, stop the pity party.
Yes,
Yep. That seems like that a lot of people need that.
they do. And, you know, I had a heart attack about 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
Mm.
Yes, I know I need to give up this bad habit.
I'm not yelling at you. My wife smokes too, and I think I think it's better for her stress level than anything.
It is.
Hmm.
Uh, but I was in Shreveport, Louisiana, working at a retirement village there in Shreveport. And
Hmm.
I was working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for 5 years. I dealt with, because I was a private employee. I did
Hmm.
not work for the retirement village. I worked for the families.
Hmm.
And so I did medications. I did death watches. I did, the doctor's appointments. The families gave me full reign over taking care of their parent or grandparent.
Wow.
And because they knew, you know, uh, the EMTs could not believe how I could remember because I had, at that point, when I had the heart attack, I was taking care of 24 people.
Wow.
And I could quote off the medications they were on at any given point, and not having to look at pill bottles, not having to look at a chart that I kept or
Just
anything
you
else.
know.
I just knew it.
Mhm.
And so I do have a very good memory. Too good a memory at times, some people think. But when I had my heart attack and the EMTs came in, they couldn't believe they were finding me down. And I was fully alert. My left arm was just killing me and had been for about, are you ready for this? A month.
Oh.
And the EMTs come in and they're joking with me as usual. And then they hooked up the blood pressure. And he ripped that off, said, pick her up, put her on the gurney, we're going. I said, what's wrong? He says, you're having a heart attack. I looked at him. I says, no, I'm not.
I don't have time to have a heart attack.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah, ain't nobody got time for that.
Right. So they got me out to the ambulance. They said, Liz, this is going to be lights and sirens. That's how bad your blood pressure is. Woo. It was 285 over 198.
Wow. Yeah.
So they were even surprised I was alert. I said, that's just because I'm stubborn and that's it, you know.
Yeah.
And,
right.
They got me to the hospital, and they had the complete heart department waiting for me. Wow. They rushed me into surgery and put 4 stents in. And I haven't had any major issues since then.
How did you feel after recovering from the surgery? Did you feel like you had more energy, or?
I was mad. The reason I was mad is I knew I was going to have to give up the job that I was enjoying.
Oh, I'm sorry for laughing, but no.
Caregiver.
I'm laughing out of understanding. Like you're like, no, like almost like mad at your body for like, no, I need to. This is who I am. I can't stop. Right? Is it kind of like that, right. Or? Yep. I'm very similar.
But you know, I've always been a caregiver. Mm-hmm. I mean, I find when I was a kid, I'd find animals that were sick or something, and I was going to fix them.
Wow.
And I would find homes for them. I tried to save a newborn bird. That one I wasn't able to save. But I didn't stop trying. I don't care if it's a child. I don't care if it's an animal. And I don't care if it's the elderly. I try to take care of them. I had one lady, her name was Mrs. Palma. Little bitty thing. She didn't even stand 5 foot. And she lived to be 101 and 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And she was a feisty little old lady. The one thing you did not try to do is keep me away from her. Because those were fighting words. And I am the only person she never threw anything
at. That's trust right there.
Because I didn't treat her like a child. And I kept telling the people that we had hired to help take care of her, because she had to have, she got at 101, she got where she had to have 24-hour care. Mm-hmm. And I kept telling them, do not treat her like she's a child. Mm-hmm. She has spent 101 years on this earth pretty much taking care of herself. When I first got her, the only thing I had to do was go in the mornings, wake her up, help her get cleaned up, because she had a urinary problem. And I mean, I figured out how to keep it from getting all over the rest of her clothes and all over the bedding. And then make sure she took her meds. Other than that, I didn't have to do anything with her, except go in and check on her and say hello and let her know I loved her.
Hmm.
She loved that. But I
Yeah.
didn't treat her like she was some child. And so we had a very good rapport. And she wanted me there when she died, and I was right there by her bedside, holding her hand because she was getting before I got there and uh, got hold of her. Uh, Michelle, the girl that was taking care of her at the time, had called me and said, "This is it," and we knew it was coming.
Hmm.
And I said, "Okay, I'm on my way." And I went running up the stairs. I didn't wait for the elevator. I went running up those 2 flights of stairs to get to her.
Hmm.
And I got in there and grabbed hold of her hand. And even though I cannot sing, I could. There are certain songs I can sing, and
Hmm.
because she had a belief in God, she liked hearing me sing "Kumbaya, My Lord."
Oh.
And so I sat there. I grabbed her hand, let her know I was there, and I started singing "Kumbaya." She calmed down and she went to sleep. And the girl that was taking care of her had to call my boss because I couldn't do it. I was, I loved her so much.
Mm.
And so she called CJ, and CJ says, "How's Liz holding up?" And she says, "This is the first time I've ever seen Liz in this type of state." And she says, "Well, I knew she would be
Yeah.
because of the rapport between the two of them."
Hmm.
And I was there until the EMTs got there and took her away. And then this was the really neat part is the family wanted to make sure I was okay too.
Oh. They
Because
recognized how much you meant to her.
right. And she had one son left living, and he was the gold digger. And she had bukus of money, and her grandson hadn't been able to get to the bank fast enough because she had told him, and I found this out after she died. She had told him, "I want Liz. I want you to give Liz $50,000."
Wow.
And he couldn't get to the bank, and the son wouldn't let him do it.
Oh.
And so, that went out the window. But and I wouldn't be in the financial state I'm in now if I'd have had that.
Yeah.
But I looked at it like the money wasn't what I was in there for.
Yeah. I was gonna say you were there for her,
Right.
holding her hand. Wow.
But she didn't like the fact that I didn't have a place of my own. She didn't like the fact that I didn't have a car, and I still don't have either one of those things.
Hmm.
And she wanted to give me some independence. That's what she wanted to do. And just the thought of it was a blessing to me,
Hmm.
you know, that she felt like she needed to take care of me.
Wow.
But we had hired girls to take care of her, and there was one of them that wanted to separate the two of us.
Why?
And when her grandson found out about it, he said he pretty much said, "No, you're not taking Liz away from my grandmother."
Your grandma. Wow. Why did she want you to separate you? What was her? Did she ever?
The
Did it ever
best that
get
I could
revealed?
ever figure out was the jealousy,
I was gonna say.
because
Yeah.
I could walk into that room and Palma would be all excited and happy to see me. She tell me, "Okay, it's time for you to sit down for a little bit. You've been running too much." And I'd go, "But no, you have got to sit down." But and I was there for her 100th birthday. Uh, Her grandson got because she'd never ridden in one other than for a funeral. So her grandson got a limousine, picked
Oh.
her and I up, took her to her birthday party where there was over 100 people. She was meeting for the first time a 6-month old that was her great 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 grandchild.
Oh, that's so cool.
And the
Wow.
family wanted me there because one, I was Palma's security blanket,
Hmm.
and they knew what I meant to her.
Hmm.
Um, and they knew I took very good care of her. Uh, for Christmas and Thanksgiving, I went with her to their homes to celebrate the holidays, and they would not let me disappear into the shadows where I could just watch her. No,
Hmm.
they made sure that I ate. They made sure I did everything for myself as well as taking care of her
Hmm.
because I knew what the oxygen level needed to be at. I was able to stand her up and sit her down. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Very easily. And they were always afraid they were going to hurt her.
Wow. What do you think it is about people? Like, because I see this on the elementary school side with kids, and I've seen this with seniors. There's this need to talk down to like little kids and seniors like their children. Like, and I always that always puzzled me because they're humans. Like when I talk, one of the reasons a lot of the my students respond to me differently than some other teachers is because I talk to them. I don't go, okay, Timmy, we're going to do this. It's more of like, okay, hey, Timmy, this is what we're going to do. And the same thing I've seen with seniors is it's why, like, it's almost like, I don't know it comes across condescending. And why do you think people come across like that sometimes?
Because they don't realize what a person is. Okay. They see children and they see elderly and they think they don't have a mind.
Interesting. And they're helpless
That's
or
my
something.
personal
Yeah.
opinion.
All right, we're going to take a quick break from solving all of the world's problems to tell you about a good friend of mine and a service she's offering. Are you tired of feeling like your dream financial future is out of reach? Are you struggling with overwhelming debt, trying to pay off your home early, or simply wanting to give more? Well, my good friend Vanessa Rutter Jackson is here to help. An educator and military veteran, Vanessa is here to guide you through the confusion and make your dream financial future a reality. With her certified financial coaching services, she'll help you create a personalized plan that sets you up to win with money. As an educator and a mother of two, Vanessa understands the challenges of scraping by and stretching paychecks. She's been there and she knows how to navigate the financial landscape to help you thrive. Don't let financial stress hold you back any longer. Take the first step towards financial freedom today with Rutter Jackson Financial Coaching. Reach out to Vanessa today for a free 45-minute consultation at varudder34@gmail.com or go to tinyurl.com/RJ Money Coach. That's varudder34@gmail.com or tinyurl.com/RJ Money Coach. Remember, it's never too late to take control of your finances and achieve your dreams. Start your journey to financial freedom with Rutter Jackson Financial Coaching today. All right, now let's get back to solving the world's problems with the most charming host on the interwebs. I think you might be onto something there. Like they see them as helpless people that need help are somehow lesser. Maybe
Right.
that's too bad. We're all. I mean, we're all going to be helpless at some point. In some way or another. That's that's crazy. Let's talk a little bit about. I mean, fascinating story, and I feel like I feel like there's been a lot of divine influence in your life, not just helping you, but it sounds like you helping others too. I definitely feel like you were put in that place in that moment to be there at her side to sing to her. I there seems to be a need for genuine people. Like one of the things on the X with Spaces, on social media, and just around the neighborhood, outside and neighbors and whatnot, there seems to be a need for genuine people, and on the flip side, there seems to be a lack of trust in a lot of things, especially our mainstream media, and a lot of, because it seems to be like, for example, there's a lot of people that are quick to label things as conspiracy theory, but I don't blame a lot of people for having quote unquote conspiracy theories, because our government, our media, a lot of people haven't really done much to instill some trust. A lot of trust has been broken, and I fear that we're going to head towards a time where we're very guarded with each other. But I found, and I want to know your thoughts and your experience on Spaces with on X, formerly Twitter, and just in social media in general, and just in regular people, finding genuine people, finding people that are who they are, not trying to pretend to be somebody, is such a refreshing thing. And to find, you know, find a, like, in the same thing with like mainstream media versus like a, somebody that's telling you not just what you want to hear, but they're telling the hard truth. And sometimes that takes the form of get out of the pity party. Sometimes you need to hear that. That's that. Stephanie and I had this great conversation about the difference between kindness and niceness. Niceness is when someone has a booger in their nose and you talk to them and ignore the booger, whereas kindness is pulling them aside and saying, "Hey, you got a booger in your nose," trying to help them. So I guess to start though, where do you feel like there's a need for genuine people, and on the flip side is how do we what has happened with our trust in media, social media, what have you? What are your thoughts on that?
Social media had, until Elon Musk bought X,
Mm-hmm.
it was all crap. Okay. We were being told what to think, we were being told how to think. We were never getting the full story.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the reasons I have love, respect, and admiration for that man. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
With what he's done in the past 48 hours, 24 hours, he is giving us back our freedom. He's taking on um, the media company. Uh, in the Also on that, we've had Ken Paxton, who is the Attorney General in Texas. He's taking it on. There
Mm-hmm.
have been other AGs now stepping up to the plate. We've got President Donald Trump. And yes, I am a supporter of President Donald Trump. He's taken on the medias. We're going to get back. And my favorite saying right now is the Liberty Bell is ringing again, because we're going to get back our freedoms of speech, which I think is going to blow up in a lot of people's faces when
Mm-hmm.
they realize just how untransparent these companies have been.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel in my heart and believe that people are going to end up seeing the truth, or a lot of people will, not necessarily everybody, but a lot of people are going to see just what has happened to us as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care what anybody says about Elon. I have watched him since he had developed the company that is now called PayPal. I watched him. He just intrigued me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his looks, the way he would look, and things that he would say. And the more I heard, the more intriguing he became. And the more intriguing he became, the more intriguing he became. So,
Like peeling
and
the onion,
yeah, it has been like peeling an onion and really learning who he is, what he stands for. And with a lot of my posts, I know you've seen some of them.
Mhm.
I have gotten flack like crazy, but I don't care.
Why do you
I'll
think you've gotten flack though? Is there? Do you think there's an agenda behind that?
Yes, yes, I do. A lot of the federal government's intimidated by him.
Mhm. Well,
Okay.
it's interesting that he was praised and held up by so many people until he bought Twitter and turned it into X. And then suddenly, like overnight, he's this villain. And like,
Hmm.
and I could argue the same about Donald Trump. Is everybody? There were so many. When he was the Apprentice. There were so many people just talking about how you fired and all this, and then it's like all of a sudden, you know, they're when they're perceived threat by those in power, suddenly they're the scum of the earth, allegedly. You know, that's crazy.
Well, in Donald Trump's case, he knows too much on the DNC because he was a Democrat
Hmm.
before he ran for president and became a Republican. He saw what they were wanting to do to this country. That's the reason the government fears him. And they're trying to do everything to destroy him. But you can't destroy somebody like Elon and President Trump because they are stronger than the majority of people on this planet.
And they're kind of, I don't want to say untouchable, but like when you're not compromised by outside influences, which it sounds like with the Epstein stuff, it sounds like there's a lot of people that have been compromised. But you get somebody that's not compromised, they can be their genuine self.
Hmm. And both of those men, and this is going to sound absolutely crazy to some of the people in your audience, I would take a bullet for either one of those men
Wow. Why do you say that?
because of the fact they do love the people.
Mhm.
That's it. They have got nothing but love and compassion. And yes, Donald Trump said things in tweets that maybe he shouldn't have, but I would rather have someone like him that you see it all than what we've got in there now.
Yeah, well, I'm not even sure what we have now. It's Weekend at Bernie's at this point. But I'm sur-
We've got
I'm
the
sur-
Communist Party in there.
but I'm surprised that I'm surprised at how many people are I'm surprised at how many people are surprised at how Donald Trump is, because he's the same guy he was when he was in The Apprentice. He's the same
Hmm.
guy he was in the 80s when he was the personification of capitalism. He was in Home Alone 2. There was a reason he was in WrestleMania. He was
Hmm.
showing up everywhere because he was the personification of wealth, and he was looked up to. I mean, there's pictures of him with the Clintons. He's everywhere. And then all of a sudden, though, like all of a sudden, he's demonized. Now, granted, he's said some stuff. There's stuff he said that I agree with. There's stuff that I was like, I don't know about that, buddy. But the thing is, this is nothing that he said has ever been, in my opinion, so, I mean, so branches that he should have the vitriol that he people have for him. I mean, he said some raunchy things. He said some stuff like, grab him by the pussy and stuff like that. But
Back
you
when
know,
he said that,
yeah.
this is something that has just totally blown my mind. There's always been the locker room talk. I don't care
Hmm.
if you're talking men talking to each other. I don't care if you're talking about women talking about men. Okay.
Yeah.
I would like somebody to say that they have never said, "Ooh, I like that girl and would love to her."
Hmm.
I would like some woman to say that she has never said or thought something about a guy.
Hmm. But the locker room talk knows no gender. There's definitely been, there's I've heard it. Definitely been some. I've had my butt grabbed before. Yeah. I mean, granted, there probably is more on the guy side versus girls, but with with Trump, though, it just seems like he was this guy, and then just suddenly here he is. He's still the same person. And why do you think it was necessary to kind of demonize the Make America Great Again, and try to portray him as this racist fascist? Like, what? Why do you feel like? Because I still don't understand where people are basing that from.
I've been trying to figure that out for years. Because my oldest daughter is a liberal, and we have to stay away from politics
Mm-hmm.
because she has called me anti-Christian because I want the borders closed. She's called me, um, I don't love people. Yeah, I do. But first, I'm going to take care of my backyard, not
Mm-hmm.
everybody else.
Yeah.
And she doesn't understand this. She doesn't comprehend it. Why? I don't know. Um, and she knows I'm a Trump supporter. And she thinks that I am, and this is the reason we stay away from politics and we stay away from religion when we do talk, because she does think like they do. And I cannot figure out why, you know. And so I don't understand where they get their ideology, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but some of it, I think, and I honestly believe this because I know George Soros is involved and he owns the Democratic Party. He owns the mainstream media. Okay, he owns all this, and he's just one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
he's paid these people thousands and thousands of dollars. Because I can remember back in the 60s, even though I was a kid, I can remember back in the 60s when he said he was going to destroy the United States.
I mean, if you were going to create a playbook on how to do that from within, it's going on.
Hmm.
It's happening.
And even after the Constitution was written and everything was put in there, Thomas Jefferson stated it would be the Democratic Party that will destroy the United States.
Wow. Well, and here's an interesting thing too. I have a lot of friends that are liberal and have voted Democrat throughout their life, and they now feel like they're being called right wing, and they haven't changed their beliefs, but they're being because but now what it feels like is like the quote unquote DNC has moved so far left that
Hmm.
now they're considered right wing, even though they haven't changed their perspective on things. And I almost feel like like we're being they're trying to pit us against each other when
I started with Obama.
and it's two heads of the same monster pitting
Hmm.
us against each other rather than us having those discussions. I like to highlight um, that Daryl Davis is this jazz musician. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was a black jazz musician who he would play with with James Brown and all and like the Spinners and a lot of other groups. And he started like when he would drive to these gigs, and there was one night where he drove with another band member who was a white man who revealed that he was a member of the KKK. And they had this discussion. He does such a better job explaining it, but they had this, instead of it being a hostile discussion, he asked questions and talked to him, and they had this like, tell me, why do you believe this? And they went back and forth, and it did, there were times where it got heated, but he continued to listen and try to hear his side and also get him to explain it. And by the time they finished the came back from the tour, the guy turned in his robe and hood to Daryl Davis and quit the KKK. And it was
Hmm.
one of those things, and it wasn't out of an argument. It wasn't out of like a heated shame on you. It was that discussion. And for the first time, this guy who has been told that black people are inferior and he's been told these things saw the human that Daryl, and it dispelled everything he was told. and so he realized he had been duped. And I feel like a lot of times that's what a lot of the, like, our government and media don't want us to do, is to have those kind, see each other as humans. They want us to other each other. They want us to look at the other person not as a human. And like, there are some intelligent people that are saying some stupid things and have some beliefs that I think, how in the world did you get to that when you were the other way about Ukraine? And like, there's some things that people are saying, but I think sometimes people get emotionally invested in an opinion and they don't want to have that conversation. But when you when you have respect and you have an honest discussion with somebody, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to learn more and grow as yourself, or you might really share some data or some information with them that they haven't thought about. And I think that's the, that I just, the reason I'm hyped up. I don't know if you saw, but New York, they're going to start instilling this thing in New York's public schools, a tool. This is what she said, a tool that's going to help students catch find misinformation and disinformation and malinformation when they're looking up things. And to me, I'm like, well, there already is a tool out there. It's called critical thinking, but
Right.
they don't want to teach that in school,
No, not anymore. They are grooming children.
Sadly.
And that's why because Elon's lawsuit came out 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the other stuff started popping up. And I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa. I am hoping and I am praying that what occurs is that with these lawsuits, not only do we get our freedoms back, but we get our country back, where people are stepping in going, no, 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 no. You teach people how to think, not what to think.
Do you feel like there's more people feeling that way than it appears?
I think there is. I've got hope.
My grandfather used to say that the emptiest cans make the most noise. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times it's few voices. It's previous couple episodes ago, where I think it was with Radham, we were talking about how every village has an idiot, but social media has allowed all the village idiots to sound as one voice. So it's like all the village idiots got together and made a village of idiots. So I think there's a lot of people that are fed up. I think there's COVID. Do you think COVID had, what are some of the effects that COVID has had, I think, on society that may have shown some light on what's going on? Do you think that helped?
No. Or it's done more destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we've got all these people, wear a mask. That's made out of paper. Come on. I need to be wearing, since I have had a heart attack, I need to be wearing a mask like I need an extra hole in my head. I mean, because all you're doing when you've got that mask on is you're breathing in the same air you just let out.
Yeah.
Come on, folks, let's do some thinking here. If you're breathing the same air, that means you're not getting fresh air into your lungs.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you can smell a fart through a mask, it's probably not going to be that effective. Yeah.
But, there are, I spend more time researching things. I didn't approve of the COVID shot, did not approve of it. No way, Jose. And anybody that is getting it now, get ready to have a very rough life if you survive.
Yeah. A lot of stuff coming out about the heart problems and breathing problems.
Well, look at the football players that died last year. Football players, professional football players dying on the field.
Yeah. Is it myocarditis they're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and look at the high school football players that have died on the field because they were forced to take the shot.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see how people have not caught on to this. You know,
Do you think it's window dressing though? Like where it appears like people haven't caught on because all of the mainstream media sources are spinning the same narrative. Whereas if you go into comments or you like people that we interact with on X, it sounds like a lot more people are, I don't want to say woke. I don't want to use that term. That's because that's a totally different meaning for people. But people are realizing that we're being duped or being lied to.
well, there were a lot of people when it first started that knew we were being duped.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of them. uh,
Yeah.
because nothing made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And if you cannot explain something to me very logically and very precise, I go, that stinks. There's fishiness going on.
Yeah. This doesn't sound like it's
Right.
on the up and up. How has Elon, not just politics, because people are there's people trying to bring him down, but how has Elon Musk changed the world just at this point for the better? And where do you see us going with some of the stuff he's working on?
Oh God.
I know, deep open question, huh?
Oh yeah, very open. Okay. Our space program now is astronomical.
Hi, nice choice of words there. Of course, I wouldn't expect anything less from the warrior poet.
X. He's fighting tooth and nail for every one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He could have walked away and never thought about buying X, but he believes in freedom of speech. He believes in the Constitution more than the majority of Americans that are walking this, that were born and raised here.
Yeah.
Okay. He is nothing but wanting to give love to people everywhere. Okay. His Tesla car and the super truck, the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
When you think about what the government has already done to our oil industry,
Mm-hmm.
that's the greatest thing to come along. Look at the price of a tank of gas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's insane.
Right. And so he's given us some freedom when it comes to the automobile. There may be some minor problems here and there, but give him a chance to work it out.
Mm-hmm.
The man's mind, if you read his book or listen to the author that wrote the book, you're sitting there and you're going, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat through that interview with the author on space, and I'm going, okay, now there were other things that were making a lot of sense to me about him. And, I've gotten tweets about how he lies about his dad. Baloney. Why would he lie about his dad? There wouldn't be any benefit to it. Also, since he is on the spectrum, what people don't realize is people like that can't lie. They do not know the meaning of it. Okay. And the majority of them that I have known in my life, because it is in my family, and I've known people outside of my family, those are genius people, period. Okay. Their minds work differently than everybody else's. And he gives 10,000, 1,000,000,000% of himself to everything he steps into. The Neuralink. Oh God, the rumors going around on that was just, I'm sitting there and I'm going, you people are dumber than a box of rocks. Neuralink is for to make it where people that have disabilities on the use of their arms or their legs is to help them be able to be more independent. He's not wanting everybody, and he plays the game that everybody, he He's got a sense of humor that is just unbelievable. I sit there and I go, oh my God. Because he lets people think what they want to think. And he'll post something like, you know, we all need that but brain chip or something. He no more believes that than the man
He
in the moon.
he does like to troll, and he does appreciate a good trolling. I think. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And you have you've just got to be able. I knew it's just like with this lawsuit. There
Hmm.
have been some posts over the weekend that I'm going, something suspicious and something is about to go down. And
Yep.
son of a gun, what happens? Monday
Boom.
evening, boom. I went, oh, yes. You know, because he's about as anti-Semitic as as my cat down here.
But you see, that's what kills me is he used to, race calling somebody racist, misogynist, sexist, fascist, anti-Semitic. That's like the go-to mud that they want
Hmm.
to throw at people because don't listen to them. And that the rule of any discussion is the moment the first person to start attacking the speaker and not the content of what they're saying is the first loser. Because what they're doing is they're not, it's the old, if you're afraid, if the king cuts out your tongue, it's because they're afraid of what you're going to say. It's that you want to discredit that person. Well, don't listen to him because he's this and this. They don't care if it's a lie. It doesn't matter because because if you, as long as they throw enough mud, there's going to be enough useful idiots that are going to believe it and run with that.
Well, it's like on some of the tweets that I've done concerning my support of President Trump. You know, his comments that should have been kept out of the media completely. Um, I've turned around and they've, you know, how he disrespects women and he believes that women shouldn't have any control over their own bodies and all of this. One, I throw out, no, the federal government should not have any control over our medical. Number
Mhm.
two, oh, so you would rather have a pedophile in office?
Well, there's something going on with that dude. I mean, Mr. Sniffles.
Well, read his daughter's book,
Hmm.
and she
Yeah.
talks about the fact
Well, and
that
then
she was.
and Tara Reid, who's now in Russia because she's afraid for her life.
Mhm.
Tara Reid was the accuser, not Tara Reid from American Pie, different Tara Reid. When they first were talking about Tara Reid was accusing Biden of this and that, I was like,
Mhm.
from American Pie, what? But yeah, just there's a there's whenever I'm almost at the point where when anybody like the moment somebody smears somebody, I'm like, all right, well, why are they smearing this person? What are they saying that you're afraid of? Why are you saying this kind of stuff? And so it's going to be a strap ourselves in because the next couple months are going to be, whoo, it's going to be a
Yeah, get
wild
your
ride.
popcorn ready.
Yes, yes. I wanna get to your poetry before we wrap up here because um I I really feel like this is, yeah, I mean, you're very moving with your poetry, and you come up with a lot of and you almost, it seems like you can take any topic. Like I've noticed a lot about the Elon stuff lately because that's fresh on your mind. But when you write, how does it flow? Do you get in like just a flow state? It just comes to you, or do you just kind of? I mean, because a lot of people, I think, overthink their poetry, where you just kind of flow with it. It seems.
It's a combination. Like some of the stuff I've written about Elon, have been very careful about.
Hmm.
So it may take me a day or hours.
Hmm.
Okay. The stuff that you see where I'm writing about loving people, loving each other, all that, a lot of times that's just flowing. It's just coming out. I'm going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Some of the
Yes,
stuff that I've posted has been stuff that I wrote years ago.
nice. And just kind of, and I think that's important for authors and poets to revisit some of their old works. How do you feel about Steph and Heidi's writing spaces and the writing sprints?
Anybody that doesn't join those that really, well, the sprints, sometimes I'm going, okay, I understand why they're doing it, and I
Hmm.
support it 1,000%.
Hmm.
But a lot of times, for like post or poetry, I don't know if those really benefit as well as it does for those that are trying to write a book.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I will say this though, like Redham caught up on some emails, and some of the other people got caught up on some Twitter posts. But you're right. You're right. It works much more for pros.
And but I'm in there,
Hmm.
you know. And I get tickled when they say, "Yeah, you could be in a space," and Liz all of a sudden does a poetry poem about it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I get tickled because sometimes something is said that just sends my head going.
Hmm.
Okay, and I'm going, okay, okay, and there's thousands of words coming at me. See, this is the reason I'm not wondering if there's not a part of me that's on the spectrum, because there's words coming from all directions,
Hmm.
and I'm having to, at the same time that I'm trying to put it all together, I'm having to decipher which words go with this and which words go with that. So there's been times that I've actually been writing 2 or 3 poems at the same time.
Do you feel like it's like this, like the words just are in front of you, and you're kind of doing like this and putting
Right.
this here? Yeah, isn't that cool? That's such a that's when the juices are flowing. That's that flow state. I just love that, and I love your spontaneity. I mean, it's almost becoming like your not tagline, but like kind of almost like you're I'm calling you the our warrior poet laureate, because you're poet laureate because you're any given space we know that Liz can write a cool poem about it, but also warrior poet because like a lot of your poems about Elon, you're not backing down from your beliefs. You are who you are. You're not going to compromise from anybody, that's fantastic, and it's inspiring. So I really appreciate that about you, and I you're right. You know, it's tough to everybody's got their own way of writing, but what are some topics that you're looking to write about next? Non Elon focused.
Um, I've got one I'm working on. I can't seem to get all of the words in the right order, but it
Hmm.
has to do with what America was like when I
Ah.
was growing up in it. Okay. I mean, it was so safe to go outside and play.
Hmm.
It was, I still think that a lot of the values that I grew up around need to be gone back to. Okay. And for those listening, I'm 65, so that gives you an idea of what years I'm talking about.
Hmm.
But we would go outside, especially in the summer, and we might not step back foot in the house until the lights came on. And then when the lights started coming on, or parents started standing outside and hollering for us, then we, you know, come in.
Yep.
Um, but we do things like kick the can at night. We would
Hmm.
go out and play cowboys and Indians, or we'd play war, or we'd do all of these different things. We'd play football, and I'm talking tackle football.
Yeah.
I'm not talking tag
There wasn't
football.
another kind of football back then. Yeah.
No, we'd play baseball. And I grew up in a neighborhood where there was everything from newborn babies to college kids.
Hmm.
And the college kids would come out and play with the elementary, junior high, and high school kids.
Hmm.
Everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a problem going out and playing. So I think these parents that put a phone or a tablet or in front of a computer these games, there are some educational games on there. I'm not denying that, but they
Hmm.
don't need to be playing the games like what Elon Musk plays. Okay,
Yeah.
education is fine, but to use that as a babysitter,
Yeah.
I hate it, because there is so much you can do with your children, even when you're tired. I mean, I worked 3 jobs, sometimes 7 days a week. And when I was home, I tried to spend time with my kids. And that wasn't a whole lot when you think about there's only 24 hours in a day and I'm working 2, 3 full-time jobs
Yeah.
at the same time. So, and that's one of the things I think my girls, and if my son were alive, all really understand that if you want something, you go out and you work for it. It's not going to get handed to you on a silver platter at all.
Mm-mm.
You know, my
I
kids
think.
grew up knowing that just because Jane had it doesn't mean I'm going to get it. You know, and my kids, when the Nintendo and all that, and they started getting those, they knew there was a time limit on
Mhm.
being able to play. Otherwise, you take your butt outside, you go rollerblading, you go skating, you go skateboarding, you play on your bicycle, and you play with the kids. There wasn't this sitting around the house doing nothing on a computer or anything.
Or
And
TikToking or scrolling. Yeah.
then when my kids reached the age where they needed the computer for school, you know, they had a computer, but they also knew Mama had the key to the back door.
Hmm.
I knew their email. I knew who they were talking to. I knew what was being said. I wasn't judgmental unless it got into something that I knew they needed to get away from.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you've heard the stories, and I'm not going to go into any of those on here, but you've heard the stories of the relationship my son and I had.
Little
Okay.
bit. Little bit. Yeah.
And he knew I was going in and reading his emails. He knew I was going into whichever program he was on. You know, I
Hmm.
checked it daily. It wasn't something I'd wait a week or two. I checked it daily and I went in through the back door. I got somebody to come in, get me networked up, get me set up where I could do that. And they showed me how to do it. And I did it because
Hmm.
my responsibility is first and foremost to my own children.
Hmm.
I'm the one that is raising them. They're not raising me. Now,
That's
to
well
hear them
said.
now, you'd think it was the other way around. But I let them
Yeah.
think they're raising me, but they're not,
Yeah.
And it's like when you're in a relationship, whether you're in a relationship or a marriage, you make sure there's quality time, not
Hmm.
quantity, quality.
Quality. Mhm.
That is the first and foremost. And like you said about your wife, she's your angel
Mhm. Big time.
and she supports you.
Yes.
Okay.
1000%.
That's where our kids learn it from.
Hmm.
And one of the things my oldest daughter said when she was in the process of getting married to the man that she's married to, she said, I want a marriage like yours and daddy's. Even though
Oh,
her biological father uh, was not involved in her life, she called Richard daddy.
that was
Okay.
daddy to her. Yeah.
Yes. Because any man can father a child, but not every man can be a daddy.
Oh, that's so profound. And that's so true. Yeah.
And they knew, the rules, you know. I wasn't going to allow them to sit around on games. Wasn't good for them.
Mm-mm.
Wasn't good for them mentally, and it dang well wasn't good for them physically. And, they only had, even once they needed the computers, they knew that I was going to make sure that the only time they were on those computers was for schoolwork. I wasn't going to allow them to no wonder I've got the wrong plug in. I wasn't going to allow them to sit around and just be on the computer to be on the computer.
Yeah.
Right? There had to be a reason. And I knew what that reason was because I'd flat out ask them, what do you need to be on there for? And my son could go through homework so fast it wasn't even funny. Okay. Drove me nuts. I finally figured out after he got into junior high that he was actually a genius. It took me
Probably,
that many years to figure it out.
yeah.
Him and Elon would have gotten along really well. Because he got suspended from school one time. They suspended him for a whole 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
They were wrong.
Wow.
He wasn't completely right, but he wasn't completely wrong either.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did what they did is they sent all of his class work home, and I was supposed to take it back there every week. He kept putting it off. Well, there are certain subjects I'm very good in, and I had some friends there were certain subjects they were very good in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he finally gets it to me about 3 days before finals are supposed to occur.
Okay.
When he gets it to me, and we grade it. Every paper that he had to be turned in that 6 weeks was done in about 2 days. And every one of them were A papers.
Oh, that's... How does that make you feel about homeschool? About students being homeschooled? In the right situation, maybe?
In the right situation.
Yeah. I think so. Well, I got to tell you, Liz, this has been fantastic talking to you. I think this will be the first of many long conversations we'll have. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing you with everybody. As we wrap up, is there any final words of wisdom or advice to the listeners about, aside from quit the pity party, which I think that in itself
be honest with yourself.
Be honest with
be
yourself.
honest with everybody else, because when you are, you're going to find you're happier. You don't have to keep up with the facades.
I love that. Awesome. Be yourself, be genuine, and be genuine be honest with yourself, be honest to others. You don't have to keep up the facade. All right. Well, thank you so much on behalf of Liz from Texas. This is Mind Runner. Make sure you follow Liz. I'll have all the social stuff. You're going to find her on X. Just go to X, look for Texas Elizabeth. You'll find her, but I'll put her socials at the end. Have a great week. You are not alone. Be honest and genuine with yourself, and you'll be happy that you did. Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.